Continuing our conversation now with Nicole Porter, and she is with the Sentencing Project. And Nicole, right now we're in the age of COVID. There are people being released from prison early. Will they be able to vote?
I mean, it depends on what state they're in. In many states, people who exit prison can vote, even if they're on probation or parole. States like Michigan, people can vote when they exit prison, regardless of whether or not they have to serve a period of time on probation in the community or parole in the community. Other states, when people exit prison, like Texas, my home state, where I am now, if you're on paper, if you're on felony probation or parole, you can't vote while you're still serving a community supervision sentence. So the question is, or the answer is, it varies. And it's why having information about the voting laws in your particular jurisdiction are so important and so critical.
So let me ask you this. If I get out of prison, the last thing I want to do is to be held responsible for showing my ID, showing up at some place where law enforcement could once again say, you're not doing what you should do. What are the restraints that are being placed on people that are being released when it comes to voting?
And I think that's been a long conversation that we've been having around including justice-involved residents in the franchise. So in several states at exit, as a part of reentry planning, information about voter registration is included. Help with getting ID and necessary paperwork is also included. That's a part of a practice known as voter notification laws. So as people prepare for their return home and their participation in the community more generally, including in certain areas of civic life like voting, people will hopefully get that information either from social workers or case managers at the prison or jail where they're exiting. It's also a part of a conversation to be had with a parole or probation officer. And then certainly, because people have such misinformation about whether or not they can vote, particularly in states where it's possible, something that community groups can also be working on to make sure that justice-involved residents are getting that information when they're seeking to return home and looking for ways to move on from their justice involvement.
I am currently behind bars. Should I be able to vote, and why?
Absolutely. People who are in prison are still citizens. They're still residents of the community. They still have an opinion. Through my work, I've visited several prisons and jails around the country and have been able to engage with incarcerated residents there. Very politicized in many ways. Some of them are more politically engaged than my family and friends. So, and these are individuals who have opinions and should have a role in who's governing them. I think, people assume that if you're in prison and you break the law, that you shouldn't, that part of being held accountable is the loss of collateral consequences, including voting. But the sentence, the prison term, is the punishment. Excluding someone from voting or other aspects of civic life is not a part of punishment, does not deter crime. And there are many ways to hold people accountable, including confining them to a cell and taking away their liberty. So people who are behind the walls, who are in prison, should certainly still be able to vote because they are residents of the community, of the country, and should have a role in who's governing the country and their local jurisdiction.
And finally, I've got about 15 seconds left. How many people are we talking about?
Well, as of 2016, we calculated over 6 million people nationally were disenfranchised because of voter bans around the country. We know that's less now because of recent reforms in Florida, Nevada, New Jersey, where tens of thousands of residents have received their voting rights back since the last few years. So, and it's all the more reason why getting this information out is so critical, because laws have changed, practices have changed. So what people knew a few years ago may have changed, and they may be able to vote for the 2020 election.
Denise Porter with the Sentencing Project in Houston, Texas. Denise, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Be safe.